this is just a public announcement for women who are sitting there complaining about why men are emotionally closed off or why they don't express their emotions. Is because if you have a man in front of you and he's expressing how he feels, and you sit there and turn around and call him a bitch for being sensitive, being like, oh my god, you're so sensitive, like, man up. Okay, you do realize that when that takes so much out of a guy to open himself up emotionally to you, to be sensitive, to show that side of himself. Because one, he can't be going to his boys and shit talking about, oh my god, bro, like I'm heartbroken, I'm sad. Like, dudes don't do that shit. But when they have a woman that they feel that they can trust their emotions with, and you sit there and turn around and be like, oh my god, you need to, like, you're such a fucking baby, why are you crying, why are you you're so sensitive, you just proved to this man why he cannot open himself up to anybody, to you.
What girls don't realize what it's like being a man.
Men are not allowed to have feelings or show emotions, and are told to the only time men get flowers is at their funeral. Men have the highest suicide rate. A man dies every minute from suicide. We need to encourage men to speak out more.
Stop criticizing men for not being emotionally available. It's not that they're not emotionally available. It's the simple fact that men have been conditioned to repress and neglect their own emotional needs. I'm going to break this down two ways, and I need you all to listen. When you all were children, men were handed action figures and toys and tool sets and blocks and stuff like that. And little girls were handed dolls and kitchen sets and easy bake ovens and things like that. So little girls were conditioned to be nurturing and to be attuned to emotional needs already, because when the baby cries, the little babies, the little dolls that they have, or they cry or they poop or anything like that, they put the baby up, they change them, they pat, pat, pat. Oh, it's okay, rock, rock, rock. But little boys are handed action figures, these based off of these superheroes who typically, these vigilantes, who typically, they don't cry, they don't really show emotion, they just problem solve, they analyze. That's just what they do. They save, they protect, that's what they do. So little girls have been conditioned as children to be nurturing and to understand emotional needs. Little boys have not. I'm going to give you all a second example. Little boy versus a little girl. If a little boy falls and scrapes his knee and he goes and he's crying to somebody, most times people are going to tell them, shake it off. His parents, his grandparents, aunties, uncles are going to say, shake it off, toughen up, man up. You're a little boy, why are you crying? But a little girl, as soon as she scrapes her knee and she comes around family, oh, it's okay, baby. And they kissing a boo-boo and they doing everything else. So little boys have already seen that a little girl's emotional needs, her physical needs, are always going to be prioritized over him. So instead of showing emotions, they neglect and repress their emotions. Instead of crying because they don't want to be criticized or shunned for their emotions, what they do is they start soothing themselves. They just toughen up. They dismiss their own emotions. That emotional neglect turns into self-soothing. And when that self-soothing starts to manifest, it turns into self-reliance. That turns into hyper-independence, to where they feel as though they can't depend on anyone. So a lot of times men have been conditioned not to be expressive. That's the reason why you see that. Society is still the same way even today. If a man cries in front of society, he's going to get laughed at, called the simp, called whatever. You too sensitive, you're feminine, those type of things. So society even still encourages that emotional repression. You know how hard it must be for a man to actually want to cry. He feel it deep in his stomach, deep in his chest, that he's sad, but he can't express it. And here's an emotional trigger. Whenever you're constantly expressing your dissatisfactions, you're constantly nagging, you're constantly asking for this, instead of actually showing some type of appreciation, instead of giving them the safe place to speak, instead of allowing them to be seen, allowing them to be heard. Instead, you're always criticizing them, or you're always right, or you're always in a need to be in control. You are triggering them. And what you're triggering is more repression. What you're triggering is that dismissive or avoidant behavior. So I want you all to think about that. Instead of you saying that men are not emotionally available, maybe take some time to understand them so you can learn how to help them.
Most men fear opening up and becoming vulnerable because there's a fear that we will be emotionally blackmailed.
Good. That's true. Bruh, that's true. Sarah Jakes, I was on her show a few months ago.
Me and Sarah talked about the same thing.
You know what I'm saying? I was like, sis, it's hard for me to open up to a woman because as soon as I open up, y'all start judging a little bit. Now, that's not Sarah. I love you, Sarah. I know that's not Sarah. I've known Sarah for 20 plus years. You know what I'm saying? I can always keep it real and vulnerable with her. That's why I felt safe to say that on her show, because she confirmed me. But Jay.
Bro, let me tell you something. That, you know,
dear men, society calls you barbarian, I call you bro. You have been brainwashed, shampooed and conditioned to be emotionless, but then called monster when nothing moves you. Right? They discount your struggle. They say men stroll through life with no menstrual and never have to bear babies, never considering the burden of always having to be a brick wall can be just as labor intensive. So today I grant you the permission to uncloak pain. Admit that you're not too He-Man to hurt. See, ever since we had to hide emotion. We were called names and tore down if our tear ducts caused the downpour. So all we knew was to load our problems in our forearms and punch through plaster while making sure our face remained a dry wall. But today I grant you permission to cry without criticism. Emotion is the motor oil that helps us run normal. So today you have permission to stop running from emotion and run normal.
Ladies, here's what emotionally unavailable actually means. It does not mean I want to stay single and talk to a bunch of women. There's nothing wrong with men wanting to stay single and talk to a bunch of women. It's when a man actually likes a girl and wants to pursue or transition into a relationship, but he has these mental blocks. He has these roadblocks in his head that is preventing him from doing that out of fear of a relationship, fear of you being the one or not being the one, FOMO, the fear of missing out. Maybe he feels like there's better out there. And what ends up happening is a guy will keep you in the position that you guys are in, where it's the talking, the texting, the fun, the hooking up, and it starts to feel like a fringe of benefits, starts to feel like something casual. And then it gets to the point where he feels I'm entitled or I'm obligated to give you something, which pressures him, and then he pulls away.
The reason men never expressed their feelings was they were taught not to. That sounds weird, but that's how it was. When a young boy started crying, their mom or dad would run to him and say, "Why are you crying? You're a man, you're not a little boy." Like that was their way of helping him get over that fall that he just fell. He got into a problem with his friends and he came home crying. It was, "You're a man, you're not supposed to cry." And that turns into a man not expressing even when he's happy or he's sad or when he's grieving. You see a lot of these cases where these men are kind of heartless in a way. That leads to men with major mental health problems. It leads to men that don't know how to express their feelings, whether it was good or bad.